Warning. This episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lissa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lissa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lissa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lissa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are. Thanks for joining us on today's show, where you will learn about the state of pleasure, igniting passion in all that you do. My first guest is Saida Désilets. Saida is the visionary spokesperson for the sexual sovereignty movement. After 2 decades of working with women on their sexuality and sensuality, a Ph.D., 2 books plus 1 more on the way, and the development of a proven psychosexual method that is now being used in female medicine. I have the great pleasure of having her here with me today. Hi, Saida. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Lissa. I'm so excited to be back. This is amazing.
It is. And I'm holding Desire in my hand. And why I say that is because this new book is a smaller pocket edition, and it's beautiful. It has a beautiful, luscious cover, actually. Very, very beautiful. So congratulations on the book. Let's talk about the nature of desire. We all have it.
I want to definitely address the nature of a desire because, it's a subject when you say desire, people leap to certain assumptions about it, like sexuality or chocolate. So in this book, I'm proposing something that I feel hasn't really been said before. And it's looking at how philosophers and religion has had kind of a negative outlook on desire, actually, that desire at the end of the day is the reason for all our human suffering. And what I'm proposing is something completely different, that desire is an emergent evolutionary force of nature that doesn't only impact human beings, it's actually part of life, kind of like gravity is affecting everything here, it's affecting life. And that it is an instigator, it's a force that actually moves action forward, it helps evolution. So that's a little bit what I wanted to say about that initially, because I think we're going to go into some other aspects of desire shortly, and I just want to give you a moment to comment on that.
Well, I think that desire is the kindling of all things. Right?
Yes, it's the instigator, it's the spark, it's the thing that makes nothing become something. So it's really powerful. And unfortunately, it's kind of an ambivalent force. It just is. It exists. It's like moving through all things. And so we can hijack it. And that hijacking process is usually done because of how we're socialized. And so that's part of the book that's really inviting the reader to explore within themselves. Is what I want really what I want? And that's a very important question.
When we talk about the songs of desire, and in your book, you really do approach it from this very lyrical perspective, there are many.
Yes, there are at least 6. There's probably more. I chose for the nature of simplicity and keeping things in a place where we could relate to it. There are 6. There's the most obvious is the desire song of Eros, which is around sexuality. So the natural turn on that we have as human beings. The desire for love is very strong in us. So obviously there's a desire song for love. Procreation is also a really powerful desire to create a family is huge. Then there's the desire for thriving, which we rarely address, but it's really important because it helps us in those really dark and difficult moments to somehow keep going.
Yeah.
So that's a very important one. And then there's the Song of Rapture, which is really, I think, could be controversial because rarely do we associate religion and spirituality with desire. But I actually think that the calling towards rapture, to know your own version of the divine, is a really powerful calling for people. And it's a very private and intimate calling. And then the last but not least in my book is the desire of contribution. Like, what am I here to leave as a legacy? What am I here to do? How am I contributing? And how vital and essential that is, because when we're not contributing, it's almost like our life ends. And you can see it a little more with elderly people who somehow feel like their worth is no longer valid and they have nothing to contribute. And you can see them start to kind of fold inwardly. And then when you get them to contribute, they start to expand outwardly again. So it's a really powerful force as well.
Desire, desire, desire. It's where it all starts. But let's talk about fulfillment, because the desire is being the spark or the kindling, and then the process of fulfillment.
I love this question. Thank you, Lisa. You're amazing. So fulfillment, think about it. It's the eternal dangling carrot before us, right? We're going for these things. We are willing to go through pain because there's this thing we're going for. And maybe there are multiple things that we're going for. And so what I love to explore is, well, what is that underneath? Because there's a million things we could be going for, but is there a commonality? What's the felt state when we attain fulfillment, when we get that thing that we really want, or we get an experience that we'd really love? And so what is that felt state? And to me, when I really broke it down, it's a feeling of intense aliveness. Right in the moment of fulfillment, whether I get the new car or I get a raise or I get, I don't know, a kiss from my lover, these things, like there's a sense of aliveness in my being for that moment.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, when we are going for hijacked desires, which is the majority of the things we go for, when we attain them, it's a really short-lived fulfillment, if at all. It's kind of like, what? This is it? Like, I thought there was going to be, fireworks or something when I got here, but there's nothing. It's kind of meh. So fulfillment, I started to realize, isn't a point on the map. It's not a end place in the journey. It's a state of being.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about the shift of awareness from a thing to a state of being is we can cultivate fulfillment as we're going for things.
Yeah.
So that, I feel, is a really powerful change of perspective.
I want to introduce the word euphoria into all of this, because we think of euphoria as that peak experience, that pinnacle experience. And what I'm hearing you say is perhaps it's in the process itself that this state of euphoria or rapture exists.
Absolutely. At least it's the invitation. And I think when we're hyper focused on an end result and we're not in the enjoyment of the unfoldment of the journey, we're robbing ourselves of moments or days or weeks or years of an experience that we could actually be having pretty consistently. And that's just purely conditioning. We don't really learn this at a young age. And so part of this book is to wake us up and invite us into the possibility. It's just a possibility, but it's there. And if we want to attempt it, it's actually not that difficult as an experience.
And, to take this into the sexual realm and give it a different kind of metaphor, in a sexual encounter, when we're making love with our partner and the focus is solely on the orgasm or the release or the end result, it actually slows down the process.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it speeds it up very quickly. But yes, in terms of feeling fulfilled sexually, it's definitely not just the orgasm or like this place we're going to. It's the entire experience, the foreplay, the sensuality, the connection, the surprise. Eros is surprising. So sometimes if we're just open and really present with one another, there's probably things that will emerge that neither person planned. And that's really beautiful.
And then you take that experience into the other dimensions or dominions of our lives.
Yes.
I see this as powerful.
Very powerful. Also because I feel like we're in a time where we're suffering from a lot of apathy. It's intense out there. There's a lot going on. And so it feels pretty natural to shut down to protect ourselves. But apathy is, for a few moments, okay. We need to disengage sometimes. But as a perpetual condition, it's really harmful. Because our human spirit is meant to have enthusiasm. It's meant to wake up with curiosity and even a little daring. That's how our ancestors did it. That's how we made it here. Yeah. We had to be daring. And so part of the book is also inviting you, saying, hey, this is who you are. Fulfillment can be had now. You have true desires. We could explore those. But in order to do that, in order to break free of hijacked desires, in order to really do that, it takes daring. Because what you're going to have to do is feel your own heart, notice what deeply matters in your heart, and be vulnerable enough to at least admit it to yourself, if no one else. And that can take daring.
Yeah. And well, without any risk, there is absolutely no reward. I mean, it's built into the reward process that there has to be risk. And many of us, like you say, we're shut down. We're on autopilot. Life and the world have gotten so busy that we have cut off that energy, that flow of desire, because we don't think we have the time for it.
Absolutely. And we vilified it, right? We're blaming this force for all our misbehaviors. So it's something important to have a look at, because if we vilify part of our nature, then we don't have access to that power. And that is an immense power that can allow us to actually create a life that we're really enjoying living, and a life that when we come to the end of our days, we feel happy about. We're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I did it. I lived this life.
Yeah. We want to be wrung out. I mean, that's my goal at the end. I want to be like a sponge, completely wrung out.
Yeah.
And then I can go.
Exactly. So we want to get our songs completely sung. We don't want to leave a song unsung. That is something that I feel is very sad.
Oh, how beautifully said. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll carry on the conversations with Dr. Saida Désilets. To learn more, please visit www.desirethebook.com. You can also find out more about Saida's work at saidadesilet.com. On Twitter, that handle is Saida Désilets. And of course, on Facebook, it's Dr. Saida Désilets. We are going to take a quick pause and we'll be right back. Before we break, I want to ask you something. Did you know that every day is a good day to train for greater emotional fitness? We humans love feeling like life is under control, but right now life can feel stressful and uncertain. There's a lot to juggle and manage, like work, school, relationships, and more. People are anxious, our daily routines have been disrupted, and our future plans are in flux. And while we're all doing whatever we can to care for our physical health, we must also invest in our mental health. My go-to self-care includes exercise, connecting with family and friends, and making time to play. But most importantly, I also take the time to speak with a therapist to help bolster my emotional well-being. If you're anything like me, you too are challenged by the impact of the pandemic on our relationships. I'm missing physical contact with family and friends in different states and worry about seeing them again anytime soon. You know what I mean, the high-touch hugs, kisses, and high fives. And that's why I'm proud to be partnered with Talkspace Online Therapy. Talkspace is a secure, interactive platform that provides a virtual space to talk it out with a licensed therapist from the comfort and privacy wherever you are, whenever, and for whatever is on your mind. Talking it out reduces stress and anxiety, and Talkspace has thousands of licensed therapists trained in more than 40 specialties. Got something bugging you? Let Talkspace help find the right mental health care professional for you. Because you deserve it and don't have to struggle on your own. Your Talkspace therapist can be your dedicated support system, there to help you feel healthier and more balanced, even in these uncertain times. The bottom line is that we all need someone to talk to, and Talkspace wants to give the licensed support we deserve at a price we can afford. As a listener of this podcast, you can get $100 off your first month on Talkspace. To match with your perfect therapist, go to Talkspace.com or download the app. Make sure to use the code HAPPINESS to get $100 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's happiness and Talkspace.com. Now here comes the break. We'll be right back, and that's a promise.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lissa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
Hang on just a second. Before we return to the conversation, I want to chat with you as a business owner and leader. Strength, resilience, and grit are essential in weathering these difficult times because research has proven that resilient folks have the ability to bounce back after challenges and adversity. And now more than ever, resilience is essential in our new world of work. If you're in charge of hiring for your company, resilience should be part of every job description. Whether you're ready to make your next important hire or need some rehiring tips, Indeed is here to help you meet your workforce hiring needs. Indeed.com is the #1 job site platform in the world because Indeed gets you the best people fast. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility in your hiring process. You only pay for what you need, you can pause your account at any time, and there are no long-term contracts. I like that. Plus, Indeed provides powerful tools to make your search that much easier, like sponsored jobs, which are shown to be 3.5 times more likely to result in a successful hire. With 73% of online job seekers visiting Indeed each month, Indeed will help you find that high-impact hire you need, just like they have for over 3 million businesses. Right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a free $75 credit to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast. Try Indeed out with a free $75 credit at Indeed.com/HH. This is their best offer available anywhere. Go right now to Indeed.com/HH. Terms and conditions apply. Offer valid through September 30th. And we are back with my guest, Saida Désilets, talking about the state of pleasure, igniting passion in all that you do. Saida, prior to the break, we were talking about all aspects of desire. And I know what comes to many people's mind is desire in the bedroom, but we're actually speaking about desire in every other aspect of our life that may flow into the bedroom.
Absolutely. And it's actually really important because we don't spend the majority of our time in the bedroom. So we want to be alive and deeply switched on in all our moments of life. And that's why I wanted to broaden our awareness of how desire is functioning within our daily moments and our ordinary moments.
And I would say that desire is what fuels everything. We have a desire for pleasure and we have a desire to not experience pain.
Absolutely. And that is a beautiful biological tendency. So even the smallest amoeba will move away from pain and expand towards what feels good. And so that's a very powerful response. And I'm glad you brought it up because when we can see that sometimes we're really simple biological creatures, then we want to start being in inquiry. Well, what does allow me to feel expanded and open? Because that is the state where we thrive. That's the state where all systems work a lot better. The immune system works better. The nervous system, digestive, all our systems are designed to be optimally functioning when we're more in the state of pleasure, at least feeling good. So I'm not referring necessarily to sexual pleasure, but just that feel good feeling.
And that feeling good, I'm going to go a step further, comes from feeling at home in one's body and in one's mind.
Yes. And what I feel really important, one of the invitations of this little book, is I question our ability to really know ourselves. And I invite the reader to spend time, I like this phrase, marinating in their own essence. Because we cannot be the designers and creators and the leaders of our own life journey if we don't know our own essence. We will unfortunately be subject to the desires and impulses and ideals of others if we don't know who we are. And so this inquiry is actually very important. And you know what's interesting, Lissa, is a lot of people know what they don't want. They know what they don't like. They know what they hate. But when I say yes, but tell me what you'd love, it's like crickets. And it's not necessarily that people don't know what they'd love. It's that it's profoundly vulnerable to articulate it.
Yes. And
that vulnerability, I think, is something that we need to lean into, at least in our own private space with ourselves. That's why I created, actually, to go along with the book, there's a whole series of free videos and some free audio meditations. And one of them, the meditations, is to allow people to really sit in their own hearts and feel what's alive there, and to at least admit it to themselves. That's where the first step of vulnerability is, right? It's with ourselves. Like, oh, wow, could I really allow myself to want that and to feel a little bit of the agony of the possibility that I may never get it, but I am still allowed to desire it. And then that makes it viable. If it exists in my heart, it's viable, even if I don't know the how at this point.
The pregnant with possibility, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, well, we call it the V word around here.
Tell me more. I like it.
I go, okay, we're going to talk about that V word. And they're like, what? The V word? I'm like, yeah, vulnerability. And then the eyes roll, because then the next thing that comes along with that V word is the exploration of the S word, which is shame.
Yes. And it's interesting because shame is a learned experience. And I do speak about shame, especially in the chapter around Eros, because that's where it shows up a lot in our culture, and the uselessness of it. But it's a learned experience. So as we learn shame, then we almost self-shame perpetually. It's like we first learn it externally, and then we perpetuate it. And the only way around that is to face it and face the vulnerability and the discomfort, and to allow ourselves to take responsibility that we exist and that we matter, and that what's important to our hearts, it's actually essential. And even if it doesn't matter to anyone else, it's okay. It matters to you. And taking a stand for that, Lissa, is something that's really part of my message. Like, we're sovereign beings. We must occupy our space. And when we do that, when we fill out this space that's called us, we can show up in much bigger ways, and we can have impact in ways that we maybe never dreamed of. But whether or not we like it, we are having impact. It's the kind of impact that we have that we can look at. If we don't embody our space, often our impact isn't that pleasant. So when we occupy space, we can start to direct our impact in really creative ways that are actually in harmony with our families and community and life itself.
I want to just go back to something that you said about occupying space, because in working with clients, I work in addiction and trauma recovery for part of my life. And I often encounter, typically they're women, but sometimes they're men as well, who have an eating disorder. And we talk about this occupying of space or occupation of space. And I think you're hitting on something really important. We must occupy. We must have a footprint.
Yes, absolutely. And what's interesting, Lissa, is this is very old. The need to belong is so ingrained in our systems, all our systems, that if we feel that's under threat, it's like life threatening. Although that's not true anymore, that many individuals can survive without their tribe, for example, we're still interdependent. And so there's this need to belong that then overrides this other stuff. So what happens is, in order to belong, we bargain away things that might be important to us, but now we're belonging, so we feel safe. And that's really important to look at, because overriding things that are really essential to our own nature is dangerous. It's when we disown ourselves. And that's when the psyche is wondering what's happening. The psyche needs the body to be in relationship with it.
Yeah.
So if we're leaving our bodies and we're not in relationship with it, it's very confusing. And that's when a lot of the traumas do happen and addictions do happen. It's like a call back to the body, but in a way that we're a little bit disassociated still in the callback.
Mm-hmm.
So reassociation, understanding that you belong primarily, first of all, to life. The fact that you're here, you belong, period. There's no even negotiation about that. And when you belong to life instead of a person or a group, it's much bigger. And no one can take that from you. It's here.
Yes. And I would also add that there's worthiness embedded in that. Just because you are means that you are worth.
There's, again, that's non-negotiable, right?
But we don't see that. Many of us
don't.
We don't see that. We disconnect from our worthiness and find ourselves in emotional and spiritual crisis.
Yes. And you know what's interesting? We're a culture that actually thrives on unworthiness. Because if you were to interact with a person who's really confident, fully embodied, totally knows their worth, most of the time they get labeled as arrogant or full of themselves or et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a culture of your misery and my misery, like they like company, they like each other. So we have to break free of that. So that the book looks at how much we're domesticated, how much we live by social mandates.
Yeah.
And how to free ourselves of that without needing to create tremendous amount of chaos. There is a graciousness and a beauty when we can simply come home to ourselves through the act of saying, you know what? I don't feel it right now, but I'm going to choose that it's true that I matter, that my voice matters, the space that I am matters, and the thing that lives in my heart that's scaring the living crap out of me, that also matters.
And what is that? Let's put a little light on this. Like, we're not going to melt. We're not going to die if we let a little light in to see what that thing is.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to the desire and the fear of our own desire, or the immensity of our want.
Yes. And so I think what happens is, because we've been so in denial of this powerful force and basically told that it's something scary and big, which it can be. It really can. It can overtake you sometimes. But when you start having a healthier relationship with this part of yourself, it's like a maturity process happens. And now you realize, I just have to worry about the next obvious step. And I don't have to force my way through life. I can actually have a listening aspect where I'm listening, like, here's what I'm going for. What's obvious? Oh, what's obvious is I need to actually meet somebody, or I need to sleep, or I need to whatever. And you do the obvious thing. What we tend to do is we go for something and we think it should be here now. And then we're looking so far ahead that it just feels impossible.
Oh.
And we're not doing what's obvious. So our life, I feel, Lissa, that we're guided by a prime directive in our essence. So when we come back, we start to listen, it's not going to be all revealed at once. Desire is the way, it's like the visceral voice of your own soul's calling. And what will become obvious is a simple thing. And you do that, and then the next simple thing. And that's how life unfolds. It's a beautiful unfolding mystery that we get to play with.
Yeah, I agree. Dr. Saida Désilets, thank you for coming to hang out with me and share your new book, Desire, exploring the daring topic of turning our attention towards our true desires can open up the doors to live life on our own terms. So that ripe, juicy subject of desire is so much more than what goes on between our legs.
Absolutely. And thank you, Lissa. You're such an incredible woman, and I just love your curiosity and passion.
Oh, thank you. To learn more, please visit www.desirethebook.com. You can also find Saida at www.saidadésilets.com, on Twitter at Saida Désilets, and on Facebook, Dr. Saida Désilets. Here comes a quick pause. We'll be right back.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and follow Lissa on Twitter at Lissa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
And we are back talking about the state of pleasure, igniting passion in all that you do. My next guest is Dr. Lissa Rankin. Dr. Lissa Rankin is one of the first guests I ever had on the show almost 9 years ago. She'll tell you about how her life and her profession has evolved, but I'm honored to have her back because I was a newbie 9 years ago and she had written her first book and we helped each other. So here it is all these years later. Welcome, Dr. Lissa Rankin, back to the show.
I'm so happy to be back. Thank you.
It's funny. You were trained as a physician. You had a conventional practice until 2007. Then you began seeing patients in your own mind-body practice in Northern California. And then you closed the practice to pursue the life of a writer and educator.
That's right. It was not an easy decision after, 12 years of medical education.
Yeah. And how many books?
I've written 7 books now. So, and I was always a writer. I was, as a child, I was a writer. I was a creative writing major in college. So it's sort of funny because people think of me as like the doctor turned writer, but it's more like the writer turned doctor turned back home.
Yeah. So you've come home to yourself through this process.
Yeah. And I certainly am still involved in healthcare. I'm training doctors now in a program called the Whole Health Medicine Institute, but it's far more aligned with my own inner pilot light than what I was doing when I was in a conventional practice.
The book that we first came together about is Mind Over Medicine, and it was a New York Times bestseller. So that was way back in the day. And and the new book we're talking about today is entitled The Daily Flame, 365 Love Letters from Your Inner Pilot Light. Talk a little bit about what you mean by the inner pilot light. I think I know. I think I shared a little bit.
Well, I first came into contact with this part of myself when I was really unhappy in my job as a medical doctor. And I was pregnant with my daughter and suicidally depressed, like really having a rough time at work. My father had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I was really feeling that integrity breach of kind of selling out at work. When I started my job, I was expected to see 25 patients a day, and by the time I quit, I was expected to see 40 patients a day. And I had that heart of a healer, but you can't be a healer in 7.5 minutes. So it was really tearing me apart. And I was, as so many people seem to be, I was on the floor of my bathroom, like bawling my eyes out with my pregnant belly in front of me. And I heard this voice that said, "Sweetheart, you're going to have to quit your job."
Wow.
And this was terrifying because, again, I'd never, medicine was my life. And I was, I was the primary breadwinner. My then husband wasn't working. We had a baby on the way. So that sounded like an impossible instruction, but it had that plunk of truth that we tend to feel when that part of us starts to give us instructions. So I began a journey now over 10 years of what would it be like if there's some part in me that knows that. What would it be like to become more intimate with that part and to begin receiving and trusting the guidance that might come through that part? And so what is it? Well, every religious tradition has their own name for it. Call it, Christ consciousness or Buddha nature or the seat of the soul or the center or, your intuition. Whatever you want to call it, I think of it as that kind of spark of divinity, that the life force, the love force that animates us as unique creations of the Creator, but also connects us to sort of the eternal flame. Like it's the portal, like the transducer to the life force of everything. I'm very much an animist when it comes to my sort of spiritual worldview. Like, I really believe everything is alive and has consciousness, even things we might call inanimate, like a mountain. And it's that divine flame in me that connects me to the mountain and the ocean and the earth and the animals and every other human on the planet and the cosmos. And through that connectedness, somehow, in mysterious ways that I certainly can't explain with my scientific mind, we can know things that we wouldn't necessarily know from our rational, logical, analytical, cognitive minds. And what I find very mysterious and very exciting is that the more I became intimate with that aspect of myself, the more that self kind of took the wheel and started kind of driving my life on a path that I never would have signed up for had I known where we were going. But it was like I was just given one breadcrumb at a time. It was kind of like, if you trust that love and follow the breadcrumbs, somehow 10 years later, you wind up going, oh my God, really? This is where we were going?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And everybody has this part. I call it the inner pilot light because some people feel like it can grow very dim, right? Like it's just a flicker. But it never goes out, unlike actual pilot lights, which can sometimes go out. This never ignites. It's like the spark is turned on the minute you're born, and that aspect, that elemental consciousness, I believe, sort of follows you when you die, or you kind of reconnect with the eternal flame. And so I think people, when they get anxious or depressed or kind of lose trust, then they can feel sort of lost and maybe think that element of themselves, that sort of essence, has flamed out. But I think it's really hopeful to realize that it's within us all and that there are tools and practices that we can do. And that's a lot of why I wrote The Daily Flame. I started writing it in 2009 because it started as a practice where every morning I would tune into my inner pilot light and I would just ask, what do you need me to know today? And I would write it down. So it was like a love letter, like my inner pilot light would write all my other parts, my anxious parts, my wounded parts, my scared parts. I would write the other parts a letter of what I needed to know that day. And I started posting some of them on social media, and people were like, oh my God, how did she know? That's exactly what I needed to hear today. So I realized that what my inner pilot light was telling me was maybe not just for me. And so I started publishing a daily email called The Daily Flame at innerpilotlight.com. And then other people started writing back to The Daily Flame, dear Inner Pilot Light, love Leslie. And they started asking questions to The Daily Flame. And so those love letters started becoming personalized to other people who had made specific requests of what they needed to hear from their inner pilot light. So it became, it's almost 10 years now of that daily practice that during the past year, my mother died of cancer. And so I was doing the sort of hospice caregiver thing. And so this book kind of came out with 365 new daily flames while I was kind of sitting at my mother's bedside and saying goodbye. So there was very tender-hearted time.
Wow. That's quite a story right there, that endpoint. But I want to go back to intimacy because you've mentioned that word several times.
Yeah.
And it is this idea that we can build this deeply intimate relationship with ourselves that interests me, what you've written here.
Yeah, me too. I love the way Richard Schwartz, he's a family therapist who created a system called IFS, Internal Family Systems, where he was working with teenagers with eating disorders and working with their families. And he discovered that the same way our family systems can have kind of multiple parts that are all in conflict and polarized against each other, that we can have these parts inside of us that are also polarized against each other. So, for example, we might have the part in us that does the bad thing that we want to quit, the sugaraholic or the workaholic or the sort of, wineaholic or whatever. Like we all have our kind of addictions.
And by wineaholic, you don't mean the drink, you mean the kvetch.
Well, however you want to define it. Right? Like we all have our compulsions. Like for me, my biggest compulsion, I actually went and did some 12 steps around it, is codependence. So it's like, God, I've got to stop overgiving and then getting resentful and trying to control people with my codependence. So you can 12-step codependence for those codependents listening in. So, we have those compulsions. And we know we want to quit, but then we have the inner critic that's like hammering the part that's doing the bad thing that we want to quit. And then we go into shame because we do it again, and then we have to do the compulsion again to feel better, and we create this vicious cycle. Wow. But we can become intimate with all of those parts, and then as we develop more of a relationship with the part I call your inner pilot light, which Dick calls self with a capital S, because he likes to sort of stay away from the spiritual, it's in us all. And that self, if we become intimate with that, if it becomes kind of our beloved, like the beloved mother that you didn't have or the beloved father that you didn't have, then that can become kind of the inner parent or the inner lover who can give the unconditional love and acceptance to all of the other parts. And that catalyzes a shift. People talk about self-love and self-compassion and all of that, but like how?
Yeah, how do we do that?
Right? This is what I love about the concept of the inner pilot light or the self, is this is the how, because our wounds can't love our wounded parts. We judge them too much. But the divinity inside of us can love all of our parts the way God, Goddess loves us. There's no judgment there. There's no way to get it right. There's no way to mess it up. There's no there. There's no place to get. Like that which you seek is already here. And if we allow ourselves to become intimate with those parts, to really open our hearts and get curious and explore and ask questions. So part of my practice with my inner pilot light is I've discovered that if I can get the question right, I'm teaching a program, I'm developing it to go with the book launch called Connect with Your Inner Pilot Light. And the practice of asking the right question is part of it. And so if I can get the questions right, if I can be curious in the right way, what I find is I always get the answer.
Yeah.
Like this, and think about the ramifications of that.
There's a passage I'd love to read from Dr. Lissa Rankin's new book, The Daily Flame, 365 Love Letters from Your Inner Pilot Light. 259, my precious. Yes, I see your to-do list. Wow, it's long. Don't worry, all will be checked off in due time. But before it all starts to overwhelm you, tune in, pause, breathe, remember divine timing. First, slow down. Give the list to me. Ask for my help, knowing what needs doing and when. Listen deeply to what I have to say. Trust that I won't leave you in the lurch, and I won't dismiss the parts of you that feel anxious about everything on that list. Give me a chance to show you that if there's something that needs your urgent attention, I'll let you know. Invite me to remove anything from your list that isn't really important. Then listen up. Take action only if I guide you. Your most trustworthy, efficient, and faithful daybook, Your Inner Pilot Light. Here comes the break. To learn more about the work of Dr. Lissa Rankin, please visit lissarankin.com, on Twitter @LissaRankin, and on Facebook, that page is Lissa Rankin. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit HarvestingHappiness.com to learn more.
Happiness, yeah.
are back, continuing the conversation with my guest, Dr. Lissa Rankin, about the state of pleasure, igniting passion in all that you do. Let's get back to the discussion. So, Lissa, I read the page that I just happened to open to, which fed me exactly the soul food that I needed for the day. The slow down, the to-do list. And you said that you opened up to one that needed to be read.
Yeah. You want me to read it now?
I would love it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so a lot of people are using this as kind of an oracle, like, what do I need to hear today? And just sort of opening through intuition. So I opened to Love Letter 197. Dear one, there are 3 ways you can live your life. Through door number 1, you can always play the victim, whining your way through life. See, there we go, the whineaholic. Whining your way through life as one misfortune after another plagues you, never claiming your part in anything that happens, always blaming and shaming others. Behind door number 2, you can take too much responsibility for your part in everything that happens, cutting others far too much slack, failing to set boundaries, and neurotically tolerating things that really are not okay with you in the name of I'm so spiritual and compassionate. Or you can choose door number 3. Behind door number 3, you don't stay stuck in your victim story, milking it for decades, revisiting it constantly, and failing to take responsibility for how you participated in the creation of the painful experience. You let yourself grieve, get angry, set boundaries, and establish consequences without spiritual bypassing. You don't spend your life whining about how bad things happen to good people, feeling helplessly attacked by a hostile universe that's spinning out of your control. Instead, you're open and curious about what you're learning, how you participated in an outcome that may not feel good, and how you might grow, awaken, forgive, transform, and get your heart burst open from the experience. It's even possible to feel grateful for that thing that hurts once you move through the painful emotions and start to see the gifts. When you choose door number 1, you may feel as if I don't even exist, even though I'm still sputtering away in there somewhere. When you choose door number 2, you miss out on the heat of my fiery, fierce flame. When you choose door number 3, you are held and loved when you feel like a victim. You are open to the fire in your belly that shows you where your hell no lives. And you open the rabbit hole to the great mystery of curiosity, humility, personal responsibility, surrender, and attunement to divine will. Of course, you are loved and you are worthy no matter which door you live behind. But let me tell you, sweetheart, door number 3 is full of magic, mystery, synchronicity, and unbearably ecstatic up-bubblings of bliss. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, your inner pilot light.
Dang, woman. That's hot. And I mean, I felt the heat rise here because, yeah. That's what we were talking about.
Sometimes the inner pilot light, they're always loving, but sometimes it's a little scalpel.
Yeah. Well, it's laser pointed, snap out of it, Loretta.
Yeah, right. Right. And some of them are just full on, gushing, ecstatic, like the grandmother who loves you like crazy just because you need to hear 10 terms of endearment in one letter.
But this is the idea that we can give ourselves these things that we need.
That's right. And that is the one part of you that will never abandon you, will never leave you. I mean, I'm in an incredible marriage. I adore my husband, but both of us practice this practice of cultivating intimacy with our own inner pilot light, because when one of us spins out and we go into a trauma loop, then we drop our partner. We don't mean to. We love each other. But in that moment, when we're fully in our story and we're kind of spinning our trauma, then the other person often feels abandoned. But what I've discovered is that if I feel abandoned by my partner, or if he feels abandoned by me, then all we have to do is go into our inner world, and everything that I wish my partner would give me in that moment when he's spinning out is right there inside of me, and I can comfort all of my parts and remind them, don't worry, we've got this.
Yeah.
And he'll come back. He always comes back. And then they calm down. And then I'm not dependent on that love from somebody outside of me because it's right here. It's so close. And then I'm able to bring more of that intimacy back to the relationship with whoever all my loved ones, because I'm bringing that clarity. Like Dick Schwartz, when he talks about self, he talks about the 8 C's. I'm not going to remember them all off the top of my head. They're in my book, but they're like compassion, clarity, courage, calm, things like that.
You know, it's when you're speaking, I'm thinking about how helpful this is for people who are rumbling with trauma.
Yes.
You know, and we all rumble with trauma. We all
are.
By the way.
The traumas of everyday life. I'm actively working with a trauma therapist because my mom died, and so like a lot of stuff comes up. I had a lot of traumas in the past 5 years. And so, you know, it's amazing the things that we think of as so small. Like one of the core traumas of my life was being 4 years old and having my 2-year-old brother, you know, attack me, like just sort of clobber me. And I would start to cry for my mother to come and save me. And when my mother got there, my brother would say, she did it. She hit me. And I would get in trouble because I was the older one. And this whole theme of like being innocent but getting punished and having nobody believe me has been like a core trauma of my life. Now, some people would say, well, that's not really trauma. I mean, I wasn't sexually abused. I didn't live in a war zone. I'm not a refugee. Like I had a kind of idyllic, you know, middle American lifestyle as a child. And yet that core trauma, which everybody has like a sibling trauma or things like that, but it can fundamentally shift how we operate and the beliefs about the world and the circumstances that we attract. And for me, that story of I'm innocent but I'm getting punished got ramped up to the point where I was in court defending myself against something that I didn't do. And I'm going, oh my God, I've got to get help.
There's the theme. And the interesting thing about trauma is the brain does not know the difference, right? The brain just sees that there's a threat to safety and well-being.
Absolutely. And when we're children, we're not resourced to handle those threats of losing love, losing approval, losing shelter. And so we'll orient our whole system. That's where all of our parts come in. We'll orient our whole system to protect the child, and those parts are still active. We're sort of blended with them usually as adults, but we don't need to be. We don't need that protection anymore because now we're adults. And so when we become intimate with the inner pilot light, and we can let that drive the bus, I like to think of it like a school bus, and you've got like 20 inner children in the back, and they're all sort of like, you know, making a lot of noise. But you've got this mature, loving bus driver who's like, yes, I hear you. I'm taking it under advisement. Yes, I hear your request, but I'm the one that's actually going to make the decisions. And life really fundamentally shifts when you have that sort of soul-led or inner pilot light-led life, rather than blending with all those parts and being reactive to life and just letting your wounds and your traumas make your decisions unconsciously. We don't even know it. And so that's why, for me, it's become a series of practices. It's very practical. It's not, it can be quite esoteric, but it doesn't have to be. It's actually quite teachable and quite learnable to discover what is aligned for me, not just what do I want. And this is where Saida and I really gel. I wrote the foreword to Saida's book. And so we really gel in that way of like, yes, my desires are part of my compass. My inner pilot light might use desire as part of my guidance. But I might also be hijacked by some of my parts that have desires that actually aren't aligned for me or might even be damaging to me. So how can I find and discover and trust the guidance that will guide me to my true calling so that I can sort of find and fulfill my life purpose, to the people that I'm meant to have in my inner circle, to my sort of soul tribe, like writing my books, all of these things I'm really dependent on this guidance system for everything from parenting to my health decisions to health decisions for my loved ones. I was just helping a dear friend make a decision about surgery by using these practices to tune into his inner pilot light so he could assess not what does the logical mind think about whether or not he should get this major risky surgery, but what's aligned. Because when we align with that transducer that is in connection to sort of everything that's knowable in the cosmos, then we can get instructions that are wiser than just the cognitive mind. It doesn't mean the cognitive mind isn't helpful, but that's one tool of about 20 that I use.
And when we think about the other brains that exist within our human bodies, right? There's the brain that lives in the head. Then there's the brain that lives in the heart, the brain that lives in the belly, sort of, and the heart connection and allowing that brain to speak, I believe is what you're really talking about here.
Absolutely. But I also take it a level beyond that, because I believe that those consciousness, those access points of consciousness also connect us to things that are outside of our physical body. And that through that portal, that's what I mean. Like the esoteric, people that in more esoteric realms will talk about things like the gnosis field. And you might call this intuition. There's times where you just, especially if it's a crisis, especially if something risky is happening, like for me being on the floor of the bathroom, where I'm at risk. And it's often in those times of crisis where we hear this guidance the most obviously. And all of a sudden you just know something that you don't know how you know it. And sometimes for me it's been very specific, like turn left now. And it turns out you just narrowly avoided a car crash. Yeah. Things like that. So where is that coming from? Oh, well, I don't know. But it's connected to all those gut brains and heart brains and, brain brains. But I think it also is connected to some sort of conductor, whatever you want to call it, that can see the whole picture better than I can see the whole picture. So something that I might think I want might actually make me completely miserable. I can certainly think of many times where I've put the force of my will behind making something happen that I was like, wow, be careful what you wish for. That was not really so great.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. You might just get
it. And vice versa. I've had times where something happens and it feels like the biggest crisis of my life. And in retrospect, I look back and see it as the biggest blessing of my life. So if we can sort of relax our strong preferences and our strong aversions into a kind of surrender to a greater wisdom that the inner pilot light can be a portal to, and trust that, follow that, let that guide you, even if it feels like it's guiding you towards something you think you don't want.
Yeah.
That is when life gets really interesting.
For the spiritually skeptical and seeking, I highly recommend the Daily Flame 365 Love Letters from Your Inner Pilot Light, which is a collection of unbridled love letters from your inner source filled with acceptance, comfort, and encouragement by Dr. Lissa Rankin, my guest today. Thank you, Lissa. I want to give our guests some contact information to learn more about Lissa's books and courses that you're developing. Please go to lissarankin.com, on Twitter at Lissa Rankin, and on Facebook, Lissa Rankin.
And can I add one more?
You can.
Yeah, the dailyflamebook.com will have some stuff that's particularly relevant just to this particular content, because lissarankin.com has all the stuff for Mind Over Medicine and the Fear Cure and the Anatomy of a Calling and all of that. But if people are particularly interested in just that content.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen and my guests, Saida Désilets and Dr. Lissa Rankin, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Go out and rock your day. And stay safe out there.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lissa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lissa on Twitter at Lissa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.